Rachel Reeves never seems to stop leaking. It is extraordinary. Today, let's give my tuppence halfpenny worth on the latest jewel in the Chancellor's crown, the so-called milkshake tax. At this point, the budget rumour mill is such a daily grind of dribs, dribbles and leaks that you could practically collect the flow and fashion a lactating urn large enough to supply a small city with chocolate-flavoured dairy produce. One wonders whether the Treasury leaks because it cannot hold water or liquid, or because it enjoys the performance art of suspense. But here's the crunch. Rachel Reeves, after locating her fiscal headroom somewhere between fantasy fiction and the back of a Treasury filing cabinet, is expected to end the long-standing exemption on milk-based drinks. The idea is simple, that the nation might be coaxed out of its sugary stupor by extending the soft drinks industry levy to frappes, milkshakes and all the neon pink horrors that masquerade as beverages in Britain's supermarket aisles. Producers currently pay a charge on drinks containing high sugar. Reeves is now expected to lower the threshold further and sweep up milk-based products that previously escaped the net. The rationale is public health, the reality is public revenue. This is not a crusade, it's a maths-draped virtue signalling. The Treasury insists the changes will bring in something between 50 and £100 million. In plain English, a rounding error, but enough for the Chancellor to wave about while declaring herself tough on sugar, tough on the causes of sugar, and incidentally the sworn enemy of strawberry milkshake. That is apparently the modern road to fiscal credibility. Naturally, the soft drinks industry has exploded into predictable outrage. It says prices will rise, innovation will be punished, and the resulting reduction in calorie intake will amount to something less than half a grape per person per day. I take no position on the precise calorific value of half a grape, but I accept their broader point. This is a measure unlikely to spark a mass slimming of the nation. But let's not pretend that public health is the sole motive here. Reeves, having marched up the hill promising fiscal discipline, only to dart back again when the numbers terrified her, now finds herself rummaging around for smaller taxes and something to say to fill in the time, something that she can plausibly smuggle into the budget without igniting a revolt. Income tax is politically toxic. Council tax surcharges provoke fury. Electric vehicle taxes irritate the Labour heartland. So, with the solemnity of a medical alchemist, she has turned to milkshakes. This is where we are. Of course, ministers argue that milk-based drinks are not a meaningful source of calcium for young people. The data shows that adolescents derive more calcium from fortified bread than from all the milkshakes in Britain combined. The Treasury has therefore concluded that the moral high ground is safe, the nutritional outrage manageable, and that the children's health will not suddenly collapse from calcium deficiency in the queue at Greggs. Thatcher, milk catcher. Still, the political theatre is irresistible. Reeves positions herself as an iron chancellor, unswayed by industry griping and the dairy pressure. Mel Stride denounces her as a goalpost shifter, punishing businesses that played by the rules, and the newspapers declare this yet another assault on households already teetering under the weight of stealth taxes, frozen thresholds, and the perennial sense that the government's numbers are written in disappearing ink. Meanwhile, the public is left asking the obvious: is this really the moment to tax the British milkshake? When the country faces stagnant growth, a yawning fiscal gap, and ministerial indecision that would make a Wankel engine look more like a model of stability, is the great existential threat truly the strawberry swirl at the bottom of a supermarket fridge? Yet the strangest part of this saga is that the government does not appear to know whether this is a health measure or a revenue measure. It wants the moral seriousness of the former and the fiscal haul of the latter, while admitting privately that neither is likely to be significant. What we have instead is symbolism, an attempt to show energy and purpose, while the larger questions of economic growth and structural reform skulk in the background like uninvited guests. That said, the symbolism may backfire. British political history is littered with chancellors who made the fatal mistake of meddling with small pleasures. Gordon Brown taxed pension funds. Philip Hammond tried to raise national insurance on the self-employed, and now Rachel Reeves appears determined to take on the milkshake. These things rarely end well. When the electoral body, when the electorate senses that its personal treats are being raided to prop up a chancellor's shrinking credibility, the backlash can be swift, saliferous, and unpredictably rude. There is also a deeper question about what this says of the government's strategic thinking. If the budget is to be a patchwork of small levies, milkshake taxes, EV distance charges, property surcharges, gambling levies and frozen allowances, then it suggests an administration that knows the fiscal picture is ugly but refuses to make the grown-up decisions that would address it. The optics of courage without the practice of courage. Yes, this, I think, is the issue. This is the, now we use the term correctly, the Wankel engine of renewal. Reeves hoped to stride into office as the embodiment of sober financial stewardship. Instead, she is wankle short. She is wobbling everywhere. Instead, she is zigzagging between U-turns and micro-taxes, her credibility eroded by the constant chaos of rumour and reconsideration. Every time a leak drips from the Treasury rafters, the Chancellor's authority evaporates a little more. No wonder she has been forced into the budget equivalent of rummaging down the back of the national sofa. So yes, by all means, let's debate the sugar content of the nation's milkshakes, but let's not forget the real story, that a government that once promised stability and responsibility now communicates via leaks, governs via improvisation, and fills its coffers via the taxation of confectionery dairy produce. To borrow the tone of a certain industry spokesman, there is no meaningful health benefit, just higher prices for shoppers, greater costs for businesses, and a chancellor staggering through the political fog in search of a strategy. My tuppence halfpenny worth is this. The milkshake tax is not a health policy, and it's certainly not a growth policy. It's a symbol of a treasury running on fumes rather than milk. A government that cannot decide whether to be bold or timid, so it ends up being frantic. And a budget that seems to have been assembled from whatever fragments were floating around in the air after the latest leak soaked into the carpet. Let's leave you with this thought. When a government begins taxing milkshakes to signal seriousness, it's usually a sign that the real seriousness is happening elsewhere, and that, I'm afraid, is the most worrying flavour of this entire concoction. Someone's got egg on their face.